You're live now, Chair.
Thank you, Jane. Right, good afternoon and welcome to Schools Forum. I'm Dave Jones, the Vice Chair. Members of the public are invited to view this meeting online and the meeting is recorded. Forum members are requested to keep your cameras on during the meeting, but only turn on your microphones when you wish to speak. If you have any questions or comments to make on the reports, please use the chat function and simply state RTS, request to speak. Officers, if you please keep your cameras off until you are called to speak. And then I'm going to ask everyone to confirm today that they are present. So, Jackie Collins.
Present.
Cher Dole.
Present.
Joe Cooper.
Present.
Laura Flitton.
Present.
Sean Preston.
I'm here.
Nathan Waits.
Yeah, I'm here.
Chris Pennell. Okay, we've got no Chris. Sharon Burt.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Russell Simpson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Terry Norton. No Terry. Cara Jewell.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Cara. And observers. Councillor Horton. No. We have Patrick Grant from the Education and Skills Agency.
Yes. Hi.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
And officers, we have Alison Edgerton.
Yes, I'm here.
Angela Mann.
I'm here, Chair.
Mike Stoneman.
Yeah, present.
Sarah Daly.
Present.
Jane Didino.
Present.
And Sarah Christopher.
Present.
Do we have anybody else here who I haven't mentioned?
Yes, my name is Sam Galloway. I work for Solent Academies Trust and I'm just an observer.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Okay, Alison, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, we have a number of apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Tom Cole, Anne Chapman, Caroline Corcoran, Nis Hardingham, Simon Graham, Councillor Leo Madden, Jason Crouch and Mike Gaston.
Thank you. Okay, so item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Have there been any changes and any need updating, Alison?
I've got 4 outstanding at the moment. Chris Pennell, Councillor Tom Coles, Anne Chapman and Councillor Leo Madden. I would say with Councillor Madden, he has literally just got the notification today because I was only informed today that he was joining the forum.
Okay. So, Alison, will you be chasing those
Yes.
declarations up?
Yes, I will.
Chair, are you aware that Chris Purnell isn't actually working at the moment? I know he's been off for a period of time, so that may be why he's not in.
Okay, thank you for letting
Okay.
us know. I'll follow that through.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Cara. I didn't know that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is membership, and that includes a vote for chair and vice chair. So at this point, I'll hand you over to Alison.
Okay, thank you. At the May meeting, I informed the forum that following the resignation of the previous chair, that Dave Jones, primary head teacher representative, the current vice chair, has volunteered to take on the role of chair, and Nathan Waits, a secondary academy representative, has volunteered to take on the role of vice chair. In line with the Constitution, both tenures will be for 2 years or until their role on the forum ceases, whichever is the sooner. I've received no other volunteers with regards to both roles, and therefore, and due to quoracy at the previous meeting, we were unable to confirm the appointment of the positions to Chair and Vice Chair. Before we vote, is there anything that members of the forum would like to ask either Dave or Nathan about their previous role in the forum to support their bid? No. Okay, no, I've a few head shaking, so I'm assuming not. Therefore, what I'd like to do is to go through the vote. I would like to request Dave Jones to leave the meeting whilst we vote on the position of the Schools Forum Chair.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a sponsor for the approval of Dave Jones as the Chair of Schools Forum? I've got Sean Preston. And do I have a seconder? And Sharon Burt, thank you. Okay, sorry, just bear with me a second. I will now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to the recommendations? No, I've got everybody shaking heads. In which case, could we let Dave back into the meeting, please?
Sorry, Alison, he's not in the lobby at the
Oh, he's
moment.
not in the lobby. Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully he will be back in shortly. Once Dave comes back into the meeting, I will inform him of the result of that. Here he looks like he's just arrived. Hello, Dave, are you there?
If he is, then he didn't come
Oh.
through the lobby.
Oh,
I didn't need to
there-
admit him,
there-
Alison,
Okay.
so you were aware.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Dave, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, Dave, I'd just like to inform you that following the Voter Schools Forum, the position of the Chair of Schools Forum is now yours.
Thank you very much.
Okay, can I pass the vote for the Vice Chair back to yourself?
Yeah, of course. So again, Nathan, I'd like to request you to leave the meeting while we have the votes. Join us in a little while. Okay, and Nathan's gone. Do we have a proposer for Nathan as Vice Chair? So thank you. Oh, several proposed. So Chair's proposed. Do we have a seconder? Sean, yeah, take you as that. Yeah, I'll now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. Sorry about the noise outside. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to the recommendation? Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, it's Cara, sorry.
I don't know if it's an objection. I'm just trying to ascertain Nathan's position because he seems to have lots of positions in the city. And on the forum, is he in as a head teacher primary rep? Is that correct?
No.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Please, Alison.
That's okay. Nathan is in as a secondary academy representative.
Okay. So some of the paperwork it seems to say otherwise. That's why I'm just trying to clarify there. So
Okay, that's fine.
thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's fine. Okay. If there are no objections, then that recommendation has been approved. So if we let Nathan back in, there we are. Okay, Nathan, are you back in?
I am indeed, yeah.
Well, congratulations. now officially the Vice Chair of Schools Forum, and a big warm welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Look forward to working with you.
Alison, are there any more membership updates?
Yes, there are a couple more membership updates. Councillor Judith Smythe has been replaced by Councillor Tom Coles for the Labour Group. I would like to formally record our thanks to Councillor Smythe for her input to the forum over a number of years, and to welcome Councillor Coles. We have also been informed that Councillor Leo Madden has taken on the role as the Liberal Democrat representative, and we welcome him to the forum. In addition, we have 3 vacancies currently, 1 Academy Primary representative and 2 Academy Secondary representatives. I will be writing to schools after this meeting to try and follow up on that. And that's all with regards to the membership.
Thank you, Alison. I think if all of us can encourage colleagues to join this group, that would be much appreciated. Okay. Next item is minutes of the previous meeting. So we need to ensure this is a correct record of the meeting held on the 24th of May. Are members happy this is a correct record? Only shout if you have any concerns. Cara.
Sorry, I just wanted to check because I had sent apologies and I'm not listed as an apology for the last meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Cara, we didn't receive your apologies, but if you had sent them, we can get those corrected.
Thank you.
Okay, if that's it, then that is the minutes of the previous meeting have been approved. We're next going to go on to matters arising from the previous meeting, and Alison's going to provide us with an update.
Okay, there are a number of matters arising from the last minutes. I just wanted to draw people's attention to the fact that I think it's item 6 on the agenda is actually part of the matters arising from the last minute. The agenda wasn't picked up before the agenda was sent out, so my apologies for that. With regards to the matters arising, the first one relates to the chair and the vice chair of the forum, and that has been addressed at this meeting. The other matters with relation to the Element 3 top-up funding for 22-23. This concerned Flying Bull Academy and Redwood Park. Following the Schools Forum on the 22nd of May, a report was taken to the Cabinet member for the decision day on the 4th of July, and all proposals in that report were approved. Under any other business at the last meeting, we had a couple of questions asked. One related to the funding for Ukraine. We are still waiting guidance with regards to the Homes for Ukraine funding for education settings. As soon as we've received that, we will obviously act upon it. And the other one was in relation to contacting Schools Forum members to ensure future quoracy. In response, we contacted Schools Forum members asking for a named substitute, and that hopefully will support attendance at future meetings. I've had a response from several members of the forum, and I'm still waiting for 7 members to come back to me. I'll be following those up after this meeting. We are also trying to promote new people to Schools Forum, and are considering what to do about consistent non-attendance on certain individuals, and we will bring that back to another meeting in the future. I think that's all I've got for matters arising. Any questions?
No, Cara, is that a legacy hand still up? Just to, okay. That's great. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Please then. So is Angela, you taking us through this one?
Sorry, yes, I am. My Wi-Fi cut out just as you said that. It's all
Sorry.
okay. Sorry. So yeah, so hopefully everybody's had time to have a look through the document. The report outlines the proposed changes to the scheme for financing schools, which reflects the revisions to the scheme as outlined in the guidance issued by the Department for Education. And section 4 of the report shows the changes, which have all been minor. There was a consultation on changes to the scheme with head teachers, governors and finance managers for the maintained schools, and that took place between the 19th of May and the 6th of June 2022, and no responses were received. And the final document is attached to Appendix 1, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I can't see any questions. I mean, for me, obviously they're very minor changes and updates. And as it's maintained schools, that's only myself, Jackie and Cher involved in this. So it's recommended that the school forum members representing maintained schools approve the revised scheme for financing schools attached as Appendix 1 to come into force on the 14th of July 2022. So can I have a proposer, please? Jackie or Cher, thank you. And the seconder, we have Jackie. Thank you. So the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. I'll now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. There is no dissent. The proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to this recommendation? And it's only for myself, Cher and Jackie. Okay, thank you. That recommendation has been approved. Okay, moving on to the dedicated schools grant outturn, and that's Alison, I believe.
It is, yes. Sorry, and I've just lost my notes. Oh, the joys
That's
of
all right.
modern
That's all right.
technology. Okay, bring back paper. Okay, so this is the annual report which updates Schools Forum on the outturn position of the dedicated schools grant for 21-22 financial year. The year-end position is an underspend of 3.4 million. The majority of this relates to funding for pupils with education, health and care plans in mainstream schools, special schools, alternative provision and outer city placements, the reasons for which are detailed in section 9 of the report. Included in the underspend is an approved planned underspend of 0.4 million, which relates to the growth fund and the school specific contingency. And that has been approved by Schools Forum previously to roll forward for use in 22-23. Following the budget adjustments in February 22, the early years block underspent by 0.3 million. This is included in the underspend and will be carried forward to support the expected reduction in funding following the adjustments for the January 22 census. Finally, section 10 sets out the movement in the carry forward balance and the proposed use of the carry forward for 22-23. Please note that the balance available for use in Table 6 would reduce to 3.3 million if the proposals set out in item 10 of the agenda are approved by Schools Forum, Cabinet Member and the Secretary of State. Schools Forum is asked to note the position of the dedicated schools grant as at the 31st of March 22, together with the associated explanations contained within this report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alison. Cher, you have a question?
Yes, I mean, it's very good news that we've got more to carry forward than we thought we were going to have. I was just interested really in the part about the early years, because noting that the numbers were down at the point, and that's part of the reason why we've got the underspend there. Have the numbers, I mean, our experience at Bramble, certainly in terms of year R and things, have the numbers started to go back up again?
We haven't seen the population numbers go back up as yet. We are waiting for the January 22 census information to come through, so we can confirm that. But our expectation from the information we've got from our information team and also the early years team is that the numbers are likely to be lower than they were in January 21, which is what our budget was based on.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? It's always much nicer when the pot is healthy, isn't it? Okay. If there are no more questions, then it's recommended that the schools forum note the end year budget position for the dedicated schools grant as at 31st of March 2022, together with associated explanations contained within the report. Do I have a proposer for approval of the recommendation? Sean, thank you. And do I have a seconder?
I think Cher might have seconded.
Chair, you seconded. Thank you very much. Okay. So the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. I will now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to this recommendation? Okay, then this recommendation is passed. Okay, thank you. Cher, have you still got, is that legacy hand up? Okay, brilliant, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is school balances as at 31st of March 22. And that's over to you, Alison.
Yes, this is an annual report to Schools Forum to report the year-end position of the maintained school revenue and capital balances as at the 31st of March 22. Section 4 details the year-end position of the revenue balances, with the second table showing the balances overall have decreased by just under 0.4 million. While the majority of schools have seen an increase, 7 schools saw a decrease in balances, 3 of which have excess balances have balances in excess of 10% of the budget and therefore are not of concern. 1 has seen a reduction of less than 25% and is being monitored as part of the regular school meetings. And the 3 remaining schools have been contacted and the actions are detailed within the reports. In addition to the schools with reducing balances, the report also looks at those schools with excessive balances. At the end of 2020-21, 2 schools had uncommitted balances in excess of their budget share. The schools have been, just realised I've given you the wrong year. At the end of 2021-22, 2 schools had uncommitted balances in excess of 20% of their budget share. The schools have been contacted asking for information regarding their balances and the reason for holding them. And again, the details are in the report. Capital balances are detailed in section 6 of the report. There has been an increase in capital balances, but this relates to a large capital project being undertaken by one of our secondary schools. It is recommended that Schools Forum note the level of maintained school balances as at the 31st of March 22 and the monitoring action being taken by the Council, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alison. Can I just comment that it's good to see it's a much sort of tighter relationship than 5 or 6 years ago, and the involvement with the local authority and schools about balances is really quite helpful now. I think that's great. Anybody else have any questions or comments? No? Okay. Then it's recommended that the Schools Forum note the report. If you can put it in the chat, do I have a proposer for approval? with the recommendation? Good. Nathan, thank you. And do I have a seconder? And Joe Cooper, thank you very much. So the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. I'll now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to this recommendation? Okay, then that is passed and the schools forum has noted the report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item about improving school attendance and reducing exclusions. That's over to Mike to present on this one.
Yep, it's over to me. Thanks, Dave. And I'm also joined by Sarah Christopher, who will provide some further details later on and also be on hand to answer any questions that might come up. So, yeah, I'll go through this in a bit of detail because it is quite an ask of Schools Forum, and I think it's right that I give this a bit of time to explain and just go through. So, in a nutshell, and noting the healthy position that we're in with regard to the DSG carry forward, we're seeking endorsement from Schools Forum for a 3-year commitment from the DSG carry forward to support a citywide relational practice programme, which is a major strand within our current strategy to improve school attendance and also reduce suspensions. The strategy, which is where this sort of started from, was approved by the PEP Strategic Board back in November of last year, and I should add it's also had a review by the DFE, one of their school attendance advisors, did a deep dive and was very complimentary about our strategy and what we're trying to achieve, particularly the focus on relational practice. And you'll see in Appendix 1, if you've had an opportunity to read through that, there are, this strategy builds on many years of work, a whole range of initiatives to try and tackle school absence and suspensions. And more recently, which I'll come on to in a moment, is a focus on relational practice, building on the previous work we did around restorative practice in schools. Just worth pointing out what we mean by relational practice. So that's a universal approach to teaching and learning, which influences the whole school ethos, systems, policies, processes across the school, as well as everyday practice, as well as providing targeted support to support those children who are most in need. And we've seen this effectively delivered in a number of cities and schools, and we're also seeing that in our city in a few schools which are part of the initiative, and I'll again talk a bit about that later. The rationale for this and why we've got the strategy in place and why we're focusing on relational practice is that we recognise that a renewed effort is required. We've had these entrenched issues around low levels or relatively low levels of school attendance and high levels of suspensions, particularly in secondary schools, but it's also true of some primary. And that's been a feature of the education landscape for some time. We've made some improvements, but we haven't made that step change. And we know that school attendance is so important for our children in terms of the progress they make during school, the qualifications they gain at the end of school, and what they go on to next. And of course, there is also those safeguarding risks, particularly around criminal exploitation, sexual exploitation, and involvement in criminal activities. So, we're very conscious that we've got to make some improvements here. We've set out in the paper the data that goes back from 1819, which is our sort of most detailed comparable data that we have, and that will show how far we need to go in order just to be on a par with our statistical neighbours, let alone national averages. We've also included in Appendix 2 the latest data for 1920, which we've got, and for 2021. Have to apply a bit of caution to the veracity of this data because of the pandemic, but nevertheless, it tells us something. It does show some improvements, which is good to see, but the challenge for Portsmouth clearly remains. In the strategy, we've set out details of what we've done over the last few years and some of the recent work that we've initiated during the pandemic. But as I said before, we need to do more. And the focus on relational practice, we believe, represents a key change that we need to apply in Portsmouth. It's been through the PEP Strategic Board, and those board members have endorsed and are convinced of the potential this could make based on similar work that's done elsewhere. And we've cited Hull and Leeds as being two cities that have done quite a bit of work on this. In Portsmouth, we have a standout example in the city. That's Trafalgar School, part of the Saltons Academy Trust, who have been leading the work on our behalf over the course of this academic year. And they've exemplified what can be achieved through this relational practice approach and embedding that ethos and culture throughout the school over a fairly long period. They've been doing this for 3 to 4 years. The impact is significant, so attendance has clearly improved there. And in terms of suspensions, the data there is really impressive. Just two suspensions in 2021, and currently just 2 in 21-22. And we're also seeing that in some of our other schools who are clearly using relational practice in their schools, and many of those schools are on our steering group, which is overseeing this work. Just in terms of where we've got to so far, so we have been we're running this on the basis of waves of implementation, subject to obviously funding being made available to support future waves. The first wave began in the autumn of 2021, and 17 of our 61 schools have been involved, but we have had a clear indication and a willingness from many other schools to be part of future waves subject to that funding. We were able to implement Wave 1 through some one-off funding through the DFE Regional Recovery Fund and a little bit of support from the council. In paragraph 3.9, we set out the support that the schools who have been involved in that first wave have received. I'm not going to go through the detail of that today, but we are planning to use a similar level of support in our schools that will be involved in future waves. In paragraph 3.10, we set out the sort of key resources that are needed to roll out relational practice in our schools. Again, I'm not going to go through all the detail today, but you can see that in paragraph 3.10. And then in terms of governance, I mentioned the steering group that we now have in place, which is chaired by Sarah Daly, and which has a representation from secondary and primary schools and a range of other partners. And our ambition, which is set out in 3.12, is to develop and build a citywide whole school relational culture and ethos across the city. And to make sure that as part of that, we are developing leadership within schools and across the partnership, establishing networks, developing CPD packages of support, and so forth. And we would expect the majority of schools to participate in this programme. And I say, based on the feedback we've so far had, and those schools that have expressed a willingness to be part of this programme, we're confident we can achieve that. But it does come down to costs, and that is set out in section 4, and I appreciate the costs are not insignificant. And what we're asking for is a commitment over a long period, so 3 calendar years, commencing in January 2023, which enable us to support at least 3 more waves in 23, 24 and 25, as well as supporting those schools that have been involved in wave 1 and indeed in subsequent waves. The majority of those costs relate to staffing costs, so there is some project coordination which will be managed by the council. To date, that's been Sarah Christopher in her limited time that she's been able to devote to this, and that is not sustainable going forward. So we would need some dedicated project coordination support. But the majority of the costs relate to senior school leaders, who we refer to as directors of relational practice. We've used one in Saltons Academy Trust, who's based at Trafalgar School, and we'll be looking to second others in other schools, both primary and secondary, as we take forward this programme. And this school-led approach, we think, is essential, because if we're going to sustain this and get buy-in and engage with schools, then we think the school-led approach is the right way to go. We've seen that successful in other programmes. The costs are set out in the table, and they equate to over £500,000 over the 3-year period. And then in section 5, we've just set out some of the reasons really for the recommendations. So the first bit of that talks about the step change that we want to achieve to address educational inclusion in terms of raising attendance, reducing suspensions, and also the wider wellbeing for children and young people. And we believe this has the opportunity to do that. We've included some testimonials from some of the schools that will be involved in Wave 1. And just looking through this, probably just worth highlighting one paragraph from Priory. I'll just read that out. Relational practice provides a structure and a language that helps us to see a more proactive response to some of the huge challenges we face. It is not new, and it will resonate with those who work in education as being common sense, but common sense is not always commonplace. Priory is currently engaging in Trafalgar's training programme, and it has provided us with reassurance, expertise, and a form and structure to help us reflect and plan. It is good work. And there are many other comments in those testimonials that you can read. We also have evidence from other local authority areas, as I've said, and we've got details of that in other appendices. It's also worth noting that other local authorities are also taking this forward, and we've cited 2 examples in the report, Gloucestershire County Council and Staffordshire County Council. But again, we know of others who are also taking this forward, and I've mentioned Leeds and Hull in my previous bit of the presentation. So that, in summary, is the case and the costs. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything to what I've said before we take questions. Sarah Christopher, that is.
Not specifically, Mike. I think it's just to add any questions and anything I can add if anyone has got any questions there.
Okay, thanks.
I think you've covered it.
Okay, happy to take any questions.
Okay, Cara, look you.
Yeah. Hello, Mike.
Hiya.
I have read the report and I think it does sound really promising. My concern is that early years budget is not ring fenced, and historically early years budget has then been kind of sideswept into these kind of projects, and obviously I'm just aware that it's not covering early years, which I actually think is a real shame because you could get some really good relational practice in early years ahead of school. But I also would like to add my concern that the early years budget then becomes used for this project.
Okay, just in response to that, I mean, obviously this is the DSG carry forward, but that carry forward obviously comes from the whole budget, so I accept there's an early years element there. In terms of early years settings involvement, that's a really good point. This is focusing very much on schools, but the principles of relational practice can absolutely apply to early years. So although I can't give you a straight answer right now, if this were to go forward, then I think we should take that back to the steering group and to see if we can extend this to early years. I think that's a really good point, Cara. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Cara. Sean.
Thank you, Dave. Mike, first of all, to say thank you so much for that. I think it's an absolutely fantastic proposal and I fully support it. The only question I got is what monitoring will be in place throughout the 3 years to evaluate the impact it's having, and what will be the get out of jail free clauses if it's not working to sort of minimise the spend if it's not having an impact?
Yeah, well, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, so the monitoring would be in place, and the project coordinator that I mentioned as part of their responsibilities would be to work with the steering group and to monitor that programme. We've also built in evaluation, and we'll be going out probably to tender to secure that evaluation. The University of Portsmouth, for example, would be probably a good partner. They have a unit called the Education Research Innovation Consultancy, or ERIC for short, and I'm sure they would be one of the partners we'd go to do that evaluation. So that is built into the programme and into those costs. In terms of get out of jail, I mean, it's a one-off cost we're asking for, although it's significant. I appreciate that. I probably have to turn to Alison and Angela on that, because there is no sort of get out of jail. You know, if we're committed to this, then we're committed to the 3-year programme and we run with it. We are confident, based on Wave 1, that this is achievable. We wouldn't have brought it to you without that sort of evidence. So there is.
And Mike, if I just clarify, if that's okay, I totally see where you're coming from. I think it's more a question of if we get to the end of year 2 and it's not having the impact we expect. Obviously, there may be opportunities to spend that money on something alternative, possibly rather than investing in a 3rd year. So that was where my question was coming from.
Sure, and if that was the case, then we'd have to look at that. I don't think that would happen, but that's a fair point. Sarah, did you want to comment on that?
Just to say, the evidence from other areas is that this is very much a long-term strategy. So we would hope to see trends in things like exclusions and certainly suspensions decreasing. You wouldn't necessarily see the headline figures in a short period of time. In other areas, they're saying in primaries it does take at least 2 years, and in secondary potentially up to 5. But in Trafalgar, we've seen huge transformation in a shorter period than 5 years there. The steering group would look to keep a really tight hand, and any kind of project plans and delivery plans would need to be very flexible and responsive to make sure that actually things are having impact. And we would get feedback from head teachers and through the PEP strategic board regularly to make sure that it is having the desired effect and moving things in the right direction.
Thank you, Sarah. Cher.
Yes, just 2 things quickly. Firstly, I did want to really support what Cara said about the early years. Obviously, in terms of infant school, early years includes year R, but we really need to be, if we're talking about a whole culture and a whole system, then it starts right at the beginning, not a couple of years in. And then just to link into what you were talking about just then, I was going to say, I presume the steering group will be looking at success criteria and monitoring, but we need that to go beyond the 3 years, don't we, in terms of, I'm not saying that the staffing commitment needs to go beyond, but if we're trying to embed a cultural change that's going to take at least 2 years, then we need to be keeping a longer term look on encouraging it, assuming that it is working. I really support this. I think it's really good.
Thanks, Cher.
Thank you. I'll just like to add, I've been on wave 1, and I think it's fantastic program, something we wanted to do, and look forward, and it's given us as a school a real structure for moving forward, and some high level support as well. So I think it's very valuable. Nathan.
2 quick questions, if I may, but just to put it into context, £500,000 is not insignificant, but in terms, can you give us an indication of the number of pupils in Portsmouth and then how that equates down?
Yeah, I'll turn to finance colleagues. So we've got about 25,000 pupils I think across the city. In terms of what that means financially, Alison, I don't know if you want to respond to that, if you were going to do it in those terms. Yeah.
Sorry, I had pressed the mute button. Yeah, so if you look at it financially, we've got roughly 25,000 pupils across the city in primary and secondary schools. It works out approximately £21 per pupil or £7 per year at the 3-year programme. So the investment per pupil is quite small for what could be potentially a large impact.
Okay. And question number 2, thank you for that. There's still quite significant carry forward in DSG for any unforeseen future events, circumstances, etc. as well, even after we've committed to this, should we approve to go ahead?
Yes, just to confirm, the table that was in the previous report and table 6, we have already allocated funding to where we know those potential pressures we might be seeing in the DSG over the next couple of years. We've already allocated funding towards that. We have approximately 3.8 million, which can be used to support schools across the city on some of the one-off initiatives. If this was to go ahead, it would leave us with approximately 3.3 million to look at further initiatives.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions? No? Okay. In that case, it's recommended that the Schools Forum endorse a 3-year total commitment of 530,000 on the DSG carried forward as set out in section 4 in order to support the implementation of the strategy to improve school attendance and reduce suspensions, and specifically support a citywide relational practice programme. Any such endorsement by Schools Forum will be subject to Secretary of State approval. Do I have a proposer for approval of the recommendation? Sean? Thank you. And Chair, is that the seconder? Thank you very much. Okay. I will now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to this recommendation? Okay, there's no objections, so this recommendation has been passed. Thank you very much. Okay, it's back to Alison now for verbal update the implementation of the direct national funding formula.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Following Schools Forum last time, I put forward a request to be involved in the response to the government consultations. At the May Schools Forum meeting, I highlighted the consultation and asked for volunteers to form a small subgroup to compile the response to the current consultation. I've received one kind offer of support and just wanted to remind members, if they're interested, can they contact me directly and I will be in touch with them. I recognise that we will need to meet over the holidays, but we will keep the meeting focused and short, sorry, not short, but relevant, sorry, to the school's questions.
Okay, thank you. So any willing volunteers, please get in touch with Alison. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Nathan, I'm happy to support as well.
Thank you, Dave.
Right. Right, last item now, dates of future meetings, just for noting. So we have the 5th of October, 7th of December, the 11th of January 23, and the 9th of February 23. That will obviously, those dates will obviously be in the minutes. So that is the end of the meeting today. Thank you all for attending. Jane is going to end the live stream and let you know when we are off air. So this might take a couple of minutes. So
Okay, I'll do that now, Chair.
thank you very much, Jane. So we'll just wait for that.